So glad to see you this morning and so happy that you're here. And I hope that this will be a valuable time for you. For the next half hour, I'm going to hope that you do what I might not do myself is shut off all the other notifications and turn down the ringer on your phone. You can get back to people. Do whatever you need to do to pay attention to this very important lesson. But going into this lesson, I want to tell you a little story. Before we do this live, every Thursday morning, I kind of prep myself for a week. I take the training of the 12 and I marinate in the next chapter. And I haven't yet gotten to all these other chapters. I'm not even sure what Bruce is saying. It's been a long time since I read the book, but I work on it. And then I get up really early, 5 o'clock, 5:30 on Thursday morning, and I consolidate all of the information and create the slides and get ready to go. But before I do that, part of what I do is an intro video to what I call my insiders list, things that I don't publish widely on the internet that I can say to people who are more in a smaller list of people that I work with. And I do a little prep video for 2 or 3 minutes and send out an email. And some people come and watch, and most people don't, but some do. And that's what's most important. You can't worry about the people that don't get the message. You can only do what you can do to encourage them to do so. Anyway, this morning when I was doing my video, I was down by the river, 200 paces from where I'm sitting right now. I had a lovely spot, and I decided I'd just walk down there and stick up my tripod and put my phone out and do the picture. And there were 3 young sick, that's sick, not seek, people who were walking by who were obviously curious on what I was saying. And they asked me, "Oh, what are those 2 books you were holding up?" And so I got into a conversation with them for about 10 minutes. And I just want to share with you that video that they were 20 paces away from me. So they couldn't hear everything, but they did see that I was hanging up, holding out books. When you get out there in public, you'd be amazed at what can happen. And I'll tell you a little bit about the conversation after I show you this. It's a beautiful morning, and I'm here at my river. I was just thinking as I was coming here to do my video today that I did my first video here over 20 years, so I can hardly believe it. We haven't lived here 20 years, but I've always loved this spot, and it reminds me that all of the molecules that come down this river are going down to Lake Ontario, and they're never coming back again. That's like time. It always slips us by. Since those 20 years have come and gone, I've reread this book, The Training of the 12, at 10 o'clock this morning. I've got a lesson for you from it. It's the foundation of what we're doing with the Breakthrough Pathways book. You can get a copy of this, and I would really love your feedback on it. If you get a copy, I can send you a PDF copy for free, but the print copies cost us money, so I would encourage you to go to Amazon and buy this Breakthrough Pathways. Richard Fleming and I have spent over a year putting this together, and it's kind of the foundation to get people started on the direction of getting here. You're some of the people, if you're watching this video, who are up here, or ought to be up here at least, and I would really encourage you to come to Breakthrough Pathways on YouTube this morning, and I'll have a video for you for the first time on the whole subject of what we're doing here. And I think that as I look back on my life, if I'd have known this earlier, I would have encouraged others in the direction of how to deal with it earlier. And I see so much in our world that has gone wrong with how the evangelical church has portrayed itself. And we're going to touch on that today. And I think it'll change your mind if you'll come and do it. And most importantly for me is not only that you come and do it, that you pass it on to 2 or 3 friends. You know, you might get excited about today's lesson and you might not, but that other person may, even if you don't. So all of these things, I believe, are worth your investment. I wouldn't be doing them if I didn't believe it. And I hope that you believe it. And I hope to see you at 10 o'clock this morning. So I'm talking to these 3 young people just because I'd say hello to them. And I don't know. I say it's going up on YouTube later. I don't know what I said. Anyway, the young lady, there was a young lady and two young men. Well, the young man was more engaged than the other, but they were both uh, saying questions. And she asked me, what would I advise young people to do with their lives today? And I explained to her, as the other two were listening, but looking them, all three of them in the eye, I said, I was born in 1944 and they're going to bury me up the hill up here. And I don't know where I'm going to die, but I do know that the actuarial tables told me some years ago that I die at 82.9 years and I'm at 80.6 years. So I've got very little time to go. So I know the first year of my birth, 1944. Don't know the last year, but what I do know, the only thing that really matters is the dash between those two lines. So you got to make the best of it. And you can't just waste your young years. I got very few left, but time is going at the same rate for you as it is for me. And so to make the best of it and learn to live by truth and seek the truth and yada, yada, yada. I went up for about 10 minutes and they're nodding their heads and very interested. And the young lady said, what was your name again? I said, there it is there. You can Google me, Gary V. Carter. Don't forget to put the V in there because there's another Gary Carter who's a baseball player. You put the V in there and you'll see that there are lots of links on Google to things that I've done and what I stand for. I don't know where that conversation's going to go, but I do know that when you actually put yourself out there and start a conversation, something's going to happen. I know that young lady, if not the young man, but probably the young lady, she'll never forget that lesson about the only thing that matters is the dash. Don't squander anything that you've got. It was a lesson that goes off into the ether, and I have no idea as to what the result will be. But what I do know is they're unlikely to ever forget that little brief conversation we had, and I'm unlikely to see them ever again. I've never seen them before. They don't generally walk in my neighborhood. Was that a divine appointment? I think so. I also think that as we kind of move into our lesson for the day, we have a divine appointment that Jesus used as a teaching lesson for these guys we've called the sons of thunder, the sons of thunder. That's what they were known as. So they were passionate, James and John. And when we think sons of thunder, we have to understand what actually was going on and what was happening with Jesus trying to teach them. So we're going to go delve into this, and I hope to come up with some practical implications for how you can live better in your life and how you can, and very importantly, pass on to others how to live better. So in this phase of the gospel, in Luke's gospel, and Matthew makes a reference to it that's very similar to, but Luke gives us more detail. Jesus is setting his face steadfastly towards Jerusalem. And he knows this is the final journey. He knows that his time on earth is ending. He is absolutely determined to complete his mission. And if you're going to be like Jesus, you're never going to retire. You're going to probably have to slow down in ill health or probably catch up with you or the last 12 years of your life. But you got to do all that you can do to be like him. You said that's what you wanted, so stay with it. Anyway, they're traveling on their way to Jerusalem. Now, normally the Jews would kind of skirt around Samaria. They didn't like Samaria. A little more, I can't remember if the slide comes up on who the Samaritans were, but they were a mixed race people. They were seen as very much second-class citizens by the Jews, and the Samaritans also didn't like the Jews, so they didn't like each other. And Jesus and his disciples needed a place to stay, and it was normal with the Eastern hospitality that you could find a B&B for cheap or free, but they refused to welcome it. Now, that rejection was probably because the Assyrians had come in and mixed marriage with the Jews back quite some time. The Samaritans were created. And this was an ethnic conflict that was going on. Probably that's why they said, no, you just go on your own way. James and John were offended and got really angry. And this is a key thing. Things will anger you in your life when you see how other people are treating life and situation. And you'll want to get even with them. You'll want to make things right. You'll want to do a Facebook post that says, they're nasty, folks. Get over it. The only people who see your Facebook posts are the people who are in your own silo, the people who already agree with you. Meta makes sure that that happens so that you think that the world agrees with you. But no, there are other people with other viewpoints. You got to avoid what these two disciples, sons of thunder, passionate men, young men, probably teenagers at this point in time, or maybe in their early 20s. And you got to avoid putting your passion into the wrong thing. So they made a proposal. They asked Jesus, should we call down fire from heaven to destroy these Samaritans? Now, that's really quite interesting. First of all, they believed in fire from heaven. They knew about it from the story of Elijah. They seemed to believe that Jesus was kind of the gateway to them calling down fire from heaven, and that in fact there could be this miraculous thing that might happen to destroy the Samaritans. And they undoubtedly thought that it was a good idea. They thought they were defending Jesus. Now, I understand how they would feel the offense, but they believed that that would be God's work. And the passage tells us quite clearly that Jesus rebukes them. See, the problem with being a zealot for the wrong thing is they always think that God shares their anger and they're helping God out by making that hypothetical Instagram post or tweet or whatever. And they believe that they have permission from God, since God and them are on the same side, to go and punish the enemies in some way. And history shows that this kind of persecution and violence ends up happening between religious groups. Stop it, folks. You don't have to try and correct all the other denominations or the theological imperfections within your own denomination. I have differences with people too, but I avoid sharing those in public. I might share with them in private in a one-on-one situation or a very small group if I deemed it appropriate. But I try to avoid falling into that trap that James and John fell into. I can't tell you how important it is to not be nasty in the way you deal with things. You can deal with things in anger. And you can take your passion and your thunder, and you can put it into anger, and you can get mad at people, and you can blast the other guy, but you won't make the impact that Jesus wants you to make. It's important that you have and regenerate the passion, whether or not people are listening to you. I was asked last week by somebody, does it, do you flag? Do you lose your energy when you realize that nobody's listening to you? And I said, no, I don't, because it's not my job to do the listening. It's my job to do the speaking. Well, it's my job from another perspective and listen to others as well. And what it drives me to do is to find a better way, to drill down deeper, to get a new element, a new approach that might just tweak things a little bit. With the internet, it's very common for people to wonder about their open rates on emails. And by the way, I get really good open rates on my emails when I send them out. But I can always do better. And I'm always concerned about stuff, and I don't put as much time into the subject line as I'm supposed to. And there's always just falling short of the standard. But I'm zealous. And another man said to me recently that of all the older people he knows, and he knows a lot, he only knows two who are passionate like me and another man who is failing in his health. He's a little older than me. I think I know a few more than that, and probably he does too, but we were the only two that came to mind. I said, what a tragedy that is. If you're older, for God's sake, stir up the gift that's in you. Get out there and share it. Pass this video on to somebody who needs it. If you don't like this, find something else that's good. Make sure that you're doing all that you can do with all the energy you've got left to strenuously do the right things. People love enemies. And for some reason, in churches, they love to hear preachers. I see them on the internet who want to say, the other guy's the bad guy. And it's fascinating because they got a congregation full of people who already agreed with them. They're not moving them anywhere. And they're certainly not getting them to understand that you can take your passion and pour it into something that's angry, or you can take your passion and pour it into love. See, Jesus had a different kind of zeal. Jesus did get angry at the pride of the Pharisees and the hypocrisy and the people who were showing off. And Jesus did show his anger, but he showed compassion to the confused and the spiritually lost and the people who were open to changing. He was often critical of the powerful, but not of the weak. His anger always was geared towards love and not destruction. So Jesus rebukes the disciples. Now, there's a statement in there in some of the manuscripts that probably wasn't in the original. This expands on this a little bit, and we'll set that aside. But Luke just says Jesus rebuked them. It's important for us to understand that there are times when in private for just one or two people to rebuke, not necessarily in the big crowd, probably not in the big crowd, but to the one or the two, to help them understand what they're calling it, what your calling is, what your message is. Bruce says in his book that they were supposed to preach mercy to everyone. And I say, mercy was not an exclusive message. It was very important. But also, there comes a time when somebody's off base to rebuke them. There are times when I probably could have used a rebuke, and people said, "Oh, I don't want it," and they didn't straighten me out. It's important for others to straighten us out, and it's important for us to relate with people. When I was sharing with my sick friends this morning, yeah, I said these are pathways that will lead you in the right direction, and he said, "Well, what do you mean by the pathways?" I said, I'll flip to the table of contents. And I said, well, alphabetically, the first pathway that we have is collaboration. That if you are just into a world of one-way communication and you're not collaborating and going back and forth with people, you will not have a good pathway for life. You need to have dialogue and discussion with people. And he was nodding his head like crazy because from a sick perspective, that would be something that would be useful for him. And then he turned to the young lady and spoke in Punjabi to one another about that's what they were learning, I guess, in school or whatever. Give me a quick summary of it. I said, come on, you guys, I don't speak Punjabi. Give it to me in English. And they just gave me a quick summary of it. It's one of the pathways to get you to grow is to have others around you. I believe in the small coterie of people that you relate to regularly makes a big difference in your life. Anyway, now in Samaria, we have another story recorded only by John, John's gospel, about the woman at the well. Jesus showed tremendous compassion to that woman, and he showed rebuke to the disciples who had gone up to buy food. John chapter 4. And I'm sure that John, when he wrote his gospel and he pondered that Jesus had shown compassion to that Samaritan woman, he didn't write about this story, but that rebuke that generated new life within him. Our job is to comfort the afflicted and maybe sometimes afflict the comforted. Jesus was always reaching out. And my lament with my new sick acquaintances, they're not friends yet. I hope that maybe the Lord will give me opportunity. It was at the church that we're working right now is in the next town. And it's not an appropriate thing for me to invite them to my church. And it's pretty useless to tell them to go to a church they probably already frequent. They go to I can never say the word Gurdwara, as probably faithful young sick students. And it takes dialogue. It takes time. It takes a building of a relationship. It takes at least 15 contacts with people before they'll ever come to your church. But I wished I was in that position to say, hey, this might seem strange to you, but I'd like to invite you to my church. But first, Let me explain a little bit about my church. We meet in a restaurant. We have very few rituals. 6 to have rituals they go through, so you won't feel embarrassed. You just come as you are, and we'll never ask you to do things that you're unfamiliar with. You can sit and ponder as two of us sit on stools in front of the cameras, and we communicate one way, and then afterwards we have a meal together, and then we can share our dialogue at that point in time. I would explain that to them if I had the opportunity, but I didn't have the opportunity today. And it just frustrates me. Someday, perhaps soon, I'd love to be able to do that here in Brampton, where we live, where there's a huge sick population of these young people who are hungry for truth because they've been taught as sick young people that they should be seeking for justice and truth. They're monotheists. They're not, they don't believe in multi-gods. Sikhism in the 15th century came out of Hinduism. And the gurus that followed up until the 1700s established what they believe is one precept upon another, and that's what they seek to live by. And these are sincere people who need the gospel. It's like the woman at the well, who had a religion already and wanted to discuss that, and Jesus directed her to the living water. That's what we're here to do. Now, James and John, give them a break. They were in trouble. They needed the cross. There's always the message of the cross. That's the irritant to people. It is the cross that it can bring down the barriers. It is his sacrificial work which opens the door because he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And he said that before the cross, but it became obvious after the cross. And Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem to finish this work, this section of the work that God had given him. And over time, John was transformed. We know that he became known as not the son of thunder, but the apostle of love. And it took a while. He turned his zeal from anger to love. That's the key thing here. He put his passion in a different direction. Now, this demonstrates the power of God to change lives. He's changed me. I trust that he's changed and is changing you, and I'm trusted he's going to change me, and I'm cramming for my finals at this point in my life. Jesus came to save, not to condemn the world, but the world through him might be saved. As John says in John chapter 3, see, he did get the message. He shows mercy to the lost and the confused people, and the people who are hungry for more. He did get angry for those who should have known better. His love always overcomes evil with good. So, what are we going to make of this? Well, understand that personal growth takes time. It takes time for you. It takes time for all the people that are frustrating you, that are around you in your church. You know, most people in your church aren't going to get it yet, but they might get it someday. And it's quite possible that your worst trait of somebody now can be flipped over, just like it was for James and John, to become a massive power for the Spirit of God to use. So be patient with yourself. Personal growth's going to take time. Always check in on your motivations. You can think you're doing the right thing, but really you're only just being self-protective. And I see this all the time where people say, well, I delayed on doing that until so-and-so and such and such. No, you delayed on doing it because you were chicken. If you wait for the perfect moment, it'll never come. If you wait until you solve all the other problems first, you just won't. You got to get out there and do it now. Help people. Don't reject them. Don't punish them. Give them or something good to think about. And when those strong emotions rise up in your life, and they will, realign them to be with Jesus' heart. Where there's prejudice and division, and often the prejudices we see are we don't see in ourselves, we can see in others, need to be dealt with. We see a lot of political prejudices, ethnic prejudices, a lot of political prejudices these days with people who are proponents of one party, hate the people, or comes close to that on the other side, and vice versa, and so on. Look, God shares his love for the whole world, and it's your job to be part of it. Choose to be compassionate over judging people. Yes, you'll see what's wrong with others as I do, and just bear in mind that it's your job not to criticize, but to help. What would Jesus do? You know, they wear those bracelets they used to and they're still around. What would Jesus do is a good question. But the most important question is, what did Jesus do? We know what Jesus did with James and John. He rebuked them, and it made a difference. Uh, the really important thing for you and for me is to focus on my mission, in my little circle. Maybe those leaders at the top and those people who have millions of followers have influence on people, but I have influence on a small group of people, and you're now one of them. And if somebody's rude with you, don't take it personally. Don't let it derail you. If somebody goes, nah, and ignores you and doesn't pick up on things, don't get discouraged. Just keep moving on. Find the next person. Your calling is to do what you can. And when people don't pay any attention, don't do what James and John wanted to do and say, kind of wreak judgment on them. Jesus had already said to them, the village isn't responsive. Shake the dust off your feet. Move on. Move on. That's what you got to do with people. Maybe they'll come back later. And seldom does it happen as fast as we want. God's working, even though we can't see it. Perhaps God's working on these young people's lives, that these three people that I may never see again. But I may be one in a chain of events that God uses in their life. God's love is much more powerful. And so make sure that you share it and that you become a part of what God has called you to be. I hope that you, this day, will take the opportunity that God places in front of you to do something really good. And what I hope you will do is pass on this YouTube channel to some people who can benefit by it. I explained before that by the end of this year, I think there'll be 2 books, but we'll see them now. I'm rewriting this using enhanced intelligence. I coined using the term artificial. It's not artificial intelligence. It's intelligence beyond our human capacity. But then, spell check in my computer was beyond my capacity too. And I want to get this out there. Bruce had a lot to say. He went through all these events in Jesus' life, just halfway through them. It's who Jesus is, and this is how he trained the 12. And you can, probably not 12 in your lifetime, but you can train a few, and train a few, who train a few. And that multiplier effect is astounding if it actually occurs in your life. You don't need to worry about the thousands. If God gives you the thousands to preach to or to reach out to, then God bless you. By all means, do so. But don't strive for that. Strive for dealing with the people who are right there in front of you, who are making it and make a difference in their life so that they will make a difference in other people's lives. So there you have it. There's the lesson for today. I hope that was a blessing to you. And if it was a blessing to you, pass it on. And if it wasn't, pass it on anyway. Okay. Catch you next time.